Show. My name is Joey. This week I am joined by Dom.
Hello there.
And by Neil.
Hello.
So, pre-season preview. How do we think? How do we think we're going to get on this season? Yeah, sorry guys. We're conscious that we did promise a pre-season preview, but then I had my house rewired and all of my stuff got put away. And we've been dealing with the fallout of having no space to record it or anything. But we're back with a bang. We will be as close to monthly as we can for the rest of the season. And we will go from there. Let's start with, and I'm going to say this slowly while everyone tries to think of something, because I'm sure we wouldn't have thought about it so far. What has been the moment of the season so far for you, Neil?
I only have a moment. I have a moment of the week, not of the season. And it was the lads going bowling, which
you've stolen
Oh, really? Did I? God, is it that good? I just thought, because it's all new. It feels so new at the moment with only a few players going, but a load of new players coming in. It was nice just to watch them in a little bit more detail. And, it seemed to be having the fun. You get a sense of who the characters are. Mr. Van Avac seems to be a bit of a card, doesn't he? But yeah, I just enjoyed watching them have good fun. And that moment where Had You Right did what I think everybody's done on that punching machine at one point or another and kind of missed it. Oh no, I see the shake of the head. You rockets over there. I know what you're doing.
No. What I'm saying is, I will finish your point because I'm gonna agree with you more than I've ever agreed with you before.
Yeah. So yeah, he just did that thing where you kind of miss it, and there's a bit of an overreaction from the other lads, which would have wound me up a bit.
Overreaction. For anybody that's not seen it, do you want to describe the overreaction?
They were on the floor for half a weekday. They were laughing, but it's kind of that thing that people do where they want to create content. And it was, who was it? O'Hare and I can't remember.
I think it was O'Hare and Van. Are we going to get a consensus on the surname pronunciation of?
I know it's something along the lines of Van Avac, isn't it? But that's how they say it. I don't know what the real thing is. But Dom, I don't think I can trust you now after your Louis Binks fiasco. So
God, well, trusting people from Gillingham to know how to spell Louis. It's like Lewis, but it's spelled foreign, ain't
it? So it was O'Hare and let's pretend Paul's here and say the Dutch right back. Literally rolling on the floor laughing at somebody grazing a punch bag, which, as you say, would have been done a million times over. But it's everything, isn't it? It's Sakamoto sat watching the bowling, just very kind of
I love it
in the way that you would if you were in a country where you didn't understand the language.
Yeah, exactly. Just smile.
And like the air hockey. What I don't know, I've watched that maybe 2 or 3 times now. That 8-minute video. I don't know why that kind of content is so utterly compelling to me. I don't know whether I prefer that sort of stuff than watching actual football matches. It's just
something about it. It's some of like the unseen stuff after the game, which is essentially the same premise now. It's not really unseen because you've kind of, what it's going to be a bit beforehand where they shake hand with the manager, but it's just that little bit of normality and behind the scenes stuff, which riveting. I love it.
I think the thing is that you're not meant to see that stuff, are you? It's illegal. It's footballers are unicorns, aren't they? They're kind of mythical beasts that don't really exist in the real world. I also was desperate to know, but I couldn't quite work it out. Were they at the Mega Bowl?
No, Leamington.
They were in Leamington. Oh, of course, they were in Leamington. Of course,
I did the research. I went and saw the back end. I saw the fonts on the back of it. I was like, "That's Leamington."
Okay. I haven't been to the Mega Bowl in many, many years, but it was a regular haunt of mine. I didn't know whether they'd done it up a little bit and it was no longer recognisable to me. I'm surprised that Leamington's got a bowling alley.
We have various things, a bowling alley, multiple charity shops, things along those lines. Yeah, it's all right in them.
I'd have just figured a touch too working class.
You think? For bowling?
Oh, I would have thought so,
it's multi-class, isn't it?
Yes, but maybe it is. Maybe it transcends. Maybe it's the thing that will bring us all together one day.
We hope.
Dom, your moment of the season so far.
I'm gonna go for the Leicester game when we were 1-0 up, and it just felt very familiar then. Just we sort of had been on the ropes a bit in that game, and then we grabbed the goal, and Gus was in full swing, scored from a set piece. It just felt like a classic performance from last season, translated to this one, and that's when it was like, oh, it's going to be all right. And then Haji Wright comes on and absolutely terrorizes the Leicester defense. You're like, this is going to be all right. Maybe we're just good now, and we spent a load of money, and we're still good. And then those 2 goals are absolute sickener.
I think the only thing with that Leicester result is that time is sort of softening it a little bit now that Leicester are sort of rampaging through the division.
Yeah,
you kind of don't think. Well, I don't. At the time, I was like, I really felt like we could have had them. And then you look at it now, and you think it's probably better that we played them at the start of the season while they were finding their rhythm.
I kind of feel all right about it as well. I'm like, okay, well, we ran them close. Nobody else seems to be able to, so that'll be all right.
Like I saw a load of people on Twitter this week, especially Cov fans, that there's been a handful of different outlets that are saying, right, so Leicester have won the league, and then who's going to get second and whatever. Saying, oh, God, nothing's decided at this point of the season, or blah, 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 blah. I think that's decided. Like, I think that's... I do think that's done.
In a way, it is, isn't it? I mean, you don't win 10 out of 11 to start with if you're not pretty good, I think. You don't do that by accident.
But it's if you watch their games, it's you see their substitutions, and you just think... I think you'd have been all right if they'd have started. Everyone that they bring on, you're like, I feel like you've got good strength in depth here to allow you to.
Yeah. And they've only conceded 6 goals.
Yeah.
Like the nearest beyond that is, I think, 11. Somebody else has, but 6 goals. They're quite.
The other night, Vardy and Iheanacho scored, and you're like, either of them.
Yeah, that's sure. I mean, it kind of makes you think that we were a little bit daft singing. It could have been you, Callum Doyle. To be fair, that was maybe premature. I'm not sure. Yeah, we like to pick our moments. So yeah.
Anything else that rings out from the start of the season? I would say I can't remember the last time we saw an own goal as good as we did against Watford.
Watford, yeah.
It was absolutely. I mean, the whole game was batshit, but that own goal particularly is right up there with strangest goals I've seen.
Yeah, it was Lee Dixon-esque, wasn't it? Similar.
Like bobbles, that sort of thing, you sort of sympathise with, but just literally turning around spoon into your own goal, I don't think is commonplace anymore, is it?
Yeah.
I thought it was lovely to see Sims get 2 the other day.
Yeah, I think I think weirdly he's been a little bit harshly judged in terms of the early games. I think people talk about his shooting or not, so he hasn't been shooting maybe enough. But I think his early games, all his shots were decent. I mean, he would get them on target. They were well connected. They weren't fluffed or anything. And I think he was looking all right as a starter. And then obviously Haji Wright was doing all right as a sub, coming on and kind of showing him up with his madness. But yeah, it was just nice to see him put them away. And I think everybody's mentioned it now, but it's that kind of instinctiveness of them, which has probably helped him because things get in your head a lot. And he was having a lot of chances where he had a lot of space and a lot of room. And we know it just seems to be difficult for even Gyökeres found those ones difficult, apart from that time he looped one over in Huddersfield. But yeah, I was glad to see that as well. I think it was a good start. And I think they're still finding their feet, but I think people have been a little bit too quick to go mad on him. He's not that bad.
That's a glowing report. Why don't we start from the top down then? So we signed Haji Wright for 8 million. We signed Ellis Sims for 3.5 million, I believe. Dom, value for money so far?
Yeah, I mean, those were like the big surprise signings because I think I was kind of expecting us just to go for like £1 or £2 million players and just trying to do the next like Harmer, Gyökeres kind of thing to like put all our chips in with that and Kitching as well, where we were just like, we've got to have this player. Was the such a surprise element of the summer transfer business. I think that's where the like pressure on like Sims has come from, and Rowe as well. Is when you spend that kind of money, you expect an instant impact, and whether that's fair on the players or not, that's the pressure it creates. Sims, yeah, I think he's been finding his feet, and I think I've seen some pretty positive signs. Right, it's just so weird that we've spent so much on him, and he's only really looked good off the bench from the start. It just seems that just doesn't seem to be able to play more than 20-30 minute periods at the moment. I don't know whether that's lack of fitness or something to do with our style, but he seems to be more of an awkward player than just like some kind of like standout Sterling kind of player you expect for that kind of money. I think that's what's so surprising about that transfer at the moment.
He looks like what you talked about before there around. He looks like we've signed him for £1 million, and that we've gone like an expensive Bakayoko, where we've gone, this guy's got body, like we'll turn him into a real footballer, but he's an £8 million international striker. And I wonder, at some point, I think there's going to be a backlash against him, isn't there?
Depends what he does. I mean,
like, he could. I mean, he could turn it on, couldn't he, and start scoring loads of goals. If we get to Christmas and he's on 2 or 3 goals, how are people not going to start having a go? Yeah. I'm not saying that's right, by the way, but
I get it. You do expect, like, this is the thing, like, regardless of the current market, 8 million for us in any money, loads of money, you know, and you, like, say, international striker, and it's not so much that. So he has shown moments. So that Leicester game, for instance, you're like, who is this man? What is he doing? He looked insanely good. I mean, the speed is just a thing that he's obviously got anyway. But yeah, I think it's the other performances where he's just seemed, I don't know the word, it just seemed a little bit lost. It doesn't seem quite, and maybe that is just because he's not at home yet and he doesn't quite understand, you know, the mechanisms in which everybody else is working. But I think that's the thing that's concerned me more than anything else, in the sense that when you spend £8 million on the player, you want probably a bit more assertiveness from them. You want a little bit more comfort from them in the team. You want them to feel like, yeah, we've paid money for somebody who isn't going to take too much time to get to grips with things. But he looks like a young player at the moment. They both do, really. Which is unusual. Whereas I think Gyökeres, while he was probably the same age or similar to Sims, I don't really know the answer to that. Maybe he was 22 or 21 when he came to us. He never struck me as a young player. He always had a bit of a stature about him, didn't he? Which was different. So it's hard to compare them to. You shouldn't really compare them to him because he turns out to be, you know, world class almost on the brink of it. But yeah, I think what I want from Wright specifically is just a little bit more assertiveness from him. I think he's fairly passive in the games at the moment, which for somebody of his size and what it seems to be his speed, you don't really want that.
Do you think it's odd how? So I'll make a statement and see whether you agree with it. I think Wright and Sims are terrifically similar types of player. Is that fair?
Yeah, in many regards, yeah.
Do you think it's weird that we bought Sims and then we're like, let's go and get another one?
It doesn't make a huge amount of sense, does it? In a sense where you feel like when Robbins buys players, he buys players with real thought in mind, and he's conjuring up a squad, isn't he? He's molding something, and those two, like you say, they are, unless he thinks we have the luxury this season of being able to use our squad and literally play one week and play one the other and do it that way, because I can't see them playing together that much unless they have to.
But this is the thing, and I wonder. So for me, still, when I look at that team, is I still think that it functions irrespective of the personnel. That doesn't make any sense, but I think you'll understand what I'm going to go on to say. Is I think we look better when it's 2 players behind 1 striker as opposed to 1 player behind 2 strikers. And buying Sims and Wright makes massive sense if the plan in the summer was to have 2 behind 1 and then you rotate those two, and Godden comes on if you need a goal. That's like, I don't know whether that's just me, but that feels like that's like a sort of logical approach. But that straight away that doesn't seem to be the case at all. It seems to be that, but I just find it hard to believe that the first choice was to play Godden as a first choice striker who was linked with moving away in the summer, and then it would be a choice between one of two players who don't really seem to like naturally fit next to Godden. I mean, I don't feel like Sims or Wright has been able to strike up anything of a relationship with Godden, because I feel like the only relationship you could strike up with Godden as a striker is if you were someone like Biamu or a player who was a sort of facilitator of goals for someone else. Fair?
Yeah, I think the only kind of comeback on that is just in terms of the shift maybe of where we've been as a club, and just it's hard to say it, but are we in a position now where we can afford to have multiple like first choice players like around? Because when you actually look at it, we could really create an attacking unit. So I like the idea actually of having the striker and two behind them, because then you think about, all being fair, you could have Casey Palmer and O'Hare behind that. You could have Sakamoto behind them. There's lots of options there, and they're all good players. And maybe it's just because it's so unusual to us that, you know, think about last season. Technically, we had Juckers, Godden, and Tyler Walker would claim to be a first choice striker, or at least want to be. You had Waghorn as well. Maybe we've just upgraded.
Less of a claim to being a first choice striker.
Yeah, I mean, maybe in his own mind, maybe that's what it was.
You're right. You know, we had four strikers. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and it's just like, is it just we've had money to spend, which means that we both expect more, but also we have to have more than one? Because let's face it, Godden hasn't had a season where he's not been injured for quite a few years now. So that's one thing. And also, the other thing that has really wound me up, and I don't go on to anything else at the moment, but the absolute like wildness of people when either the first team isn't the same, or the idea that somebody hasn't played a couple of games. We're going to play so many games this season. Sakamoto is going to play so many games this season. He's not going to. So whatever team is this week isn't going to be the team last game of the season. It just doesn't work like that. We've seen it so many times before, and then you know what happens? Well, we get 10 days down the line and somebody gets an injury or they get suspended for 3 games, and then we start whinging because last season, we have to bring in Waghorn or we have to bring in Walker and they're not quite up to it. Well, maybe this is what you do when you're going for promotion. You spend a bit more and you hope that you somehow, in a football manager sense, keep people happy somehow. They should do. They're quite young.
But also, I think that what's been pleasing about this season so far for me is that I think we would have liked to have had a better start, and I think there are reasons why we haven't that are fair enough. Like, it's about gelling that squad and blah, blah, blah. But as the season goes on, I do feel like there's an equilibrium in the squad that we haven't had since we've been back in the Championship, where if Latabodiere comes in for Bobby Thomas on the right of the back three, there isn't this stark drop-off in quality that has been in the past, where you think, well, the reason that we've got to keep the same first team is because we don't have anything in reserve. Actually, this season, we've had Sakamoto, Van Nevijk, and someone else at right wing-back.
Yeah, Eccles and, well, not Eccles really, but Latabodiere was there as well, wasn't he?
Latabodiere's played there as well. Yeah. And actually, the kind of, even Latabodiere, I thought looked perfectly fine there. And I think throughout the squad is that you're seeing instances of players coming in and out, and you're thinking, well, I sort of don't mind this rotation because I'm not noticing this huge drop-off in quality. And as well, the players themselves are fairly interchangeable. You've got Binks, who's come out last week for Kitching. You kind of think, well, it's just 2 left-sided, left-footed centre-backs. It's fine. This is okay. I'm not doing weird things to facilitate rotation. And like you say, I think as long as it's not insane, it's a long, hard season, isn't it? It's good that we've got that depth now.
Yeah, I think the only area is where there's a kind of an issue probably is the midfield. So that central midfield area where you've got Liam Kelly and Sheaf and Eccles, and we've kind of seen it. And it's not so much that I don't think any of those can play first team. I think when we've lost Hamer, there's a star quality there in the midfield, which there is a drop off. Then I mean, and again, I don't think that they can't play first team, but I just think Kelly and Eccles as a sustainable midfield isn't anywhere.
We're experiencing some technical difficulties. You'll be back with us shortly. If I had more time on my hands, I'd drop in some kind of BBC style technical difficulty music here. Neil's dropped out for a second, and he's back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Neil.
When did you lose me?
Don't worry about it because I won't be editing it. So you were talking about the midfield situation, and that ideally you wouldn't have, not even as a criticism of Kelly, but I think I think most people would agree that at the end of last season, what we were hoping for was something of a magical swan song, and that Kelly would either stay and barely feature, or that he would go on to pastures new with a thank you for everything that you've done here situation. I don't think it's a criticism of Liam Kelly or unfair on him to say it is somewhat disappointing to see how many minutes he's already played this season after you've spent as much money as we've spent.
Yeah, it was a gap, I think. And if we've done so much effort in supplementing the other areas of the pitch with very, very kind of apt replacements, people who can come in and you don't, like you say, you don't mind swapping them around because they should be of the right quality. I just feel like in the middle where Sheaf is the star man for me, you've got Eccles, who I think is a really, really good supplementary player who supports those players well. And I think he can be first team all season long. When you lose Sheaf and you lose Hamer, that stardust, which I think we've been very used to. For me, it's just been the most notable place on the pitch where we've kind of lacked. And it was only, what game was it where we won? It was QPR. It's only QPR away where inexplicably Jamie Allen kind of stepped into the role of key playmaker, and I think he's a fine support player, and I think he helps the others a lot, and there's no reason why he can't play first team for us. But it was very unusual to see him step up and actually be the main man on the pitch, which was good. It's glad. It was great to see it, but sustainably, I just don't know if we have injuries in the midfield. I don't know how we support that for the whole season. So just fingers crossed we can get a little bit lucky there, I think.
I'd be absolutely gobsmacked if we don't make quite a sizable signing in the midfield in January.
I think he knows there's a gap. Wasn't the idea that he just didn't want to rush the Hamer replacement? But you've got to do something, haven't you?
I think it was a number of things, wasn't it? But I think they've already been fairly vocal about the fact that I think the expectation for me is that, like, on January the 1st, there's somebody waiting under the Christmas tree. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think they want it to be literally the first moment that they can possibly do. A bit like how, like, Jay Da Silva basically got on the bus with the players at Wembley on the way back.
You just know, it's coming.
It was just, they were like, this is, So I would be surprised if we don't sign 2 central midfielders, because to me it feels like Ben Sheaf you want as a first choice. Then I think you probably want one superstar next to him, or as close to a superstar as you can get. And then I think you probably want a player who is sort of Josh Eccles level. Maybe that's Ayari of kind of Hamer,
he's in there.
Hamer replacement. And then you want Eccles to be Sheaf's kind of either rotator in easier games or a backup for Sheaf. Because as good as Josh Eccles is that I'd still sort of prefer Ben Sheaf over him, and then have a more kind of creative midfielder next to him, I suppose. Just, again, it's not... Eccles has been great so far this season for me.
Yeah.
The funny thing with Eccles is that I wonder if we'd have predicted that of the players over the last 10 years to have properly broken through and be like a proper first team player, especially after all the injuries that he had. It's funny to me that it's him.
Yeah,
especially for the level that we're at.
Yeah,
perhaps it's because he's not been bought. Someone like Ben Stevenson would have been that player, but someone bought him. Whereas Eccles, I guess, hasn't been. So that's what's allowed him to be that player.
maybe the injuries did help in the sense where they helped us keep him under the radar. I mean, and he is sort of low key in the sense where he's not a star player. We don't kind of recognize him as a star player, and I don't think opposition fans really notice it. But I was looking at the other day when we was watching him, and had this period in the match where probably 15 minutes where he was probably the best player on the pitch. And I had in my mind looking over at Norwich fans, have they noticed this? And he doesn't seem like a player that you necessarily notice that much. It kind of Dom Hyam-esque, where they just go about their business very, very well. And it could be this season that he steps up and he kind of showcases his kind of star quality a bit more, because I kind of think we need that. We need it from somebody. But I wasn't expecting it either, just because I think he's so low key. But Robbins loves him, and I think a lot of the players rate him a lot as well. So he definitely does something.
Taking corners?
Yeah, well, it's useful, isn't it, to have somebody?
Corners are a big waste of time, though, aren't they? The defence, Dom. I'm going to start by asking you, as it stands at the moment, if everyone's fit, who's your back three?
I really like the balance you have with Thomas, McFadden, and Kitchen in terms of
the lads,
what they give us in possession as well. Because you got McFadden sort of holding the fort in the middle, and then you got Thomas and Kitchen who like to get forward. And I think when we're in a period, especially when we don't have like a midfield playmaker, having Thomas, especially Kitchen, making some of those runs he made from left centre back, it helps open up the game. In a way, it helps sort of break the lines. There's a couple of sort of give and goes that Kitchen had on Saturday, which were really entertaining. I think that helped give us some energy in our possession play that we're otherwise lacking. I think defensively at the moment just hasn't settled down at all. It's hard to tell who are the good defenders out of the five we have. Or we know McFadden, if you stick him in the middle and try not to expose him against too much pace, which I think could be a bit of a problem later down the line if we really want to pursue being a possession team and trying to dominate and control games, knowing that it might be quite easy for teams to get in behind us, especially when you got the wide centre backs pushing on, trying to join the attacks too. I think that could be the point, but we've been there with McFadden before, and it's almost sort of pointless at this moment trying to figure out when we might not need him anymore, because he always seems to find a way to make himself useful, or just things seem to collapse without him. Then Lamptey, he's just a touch soft, and you just lose that physicality that you have with Thomas on the right, and I think Kitchen and Binks, there isn't too much between them. I do worry about both of them, whether they are the strongest defenders individually. Kitchen, when he was last at this level, struggled a fair bit with Barnsley. I know it's sort of 2 years later, and he did some growing last season in League One, became a bit of a leader at the back for Barnsley, but it's just been a couple of moments in the minutes he's had already where he's looked a tiny bit ropey. And I think Binks has looked okay, but he hasn't massively tested. And then you look at that goal QPR scored, and I know Sinclair Armstrong is a bit of a freaking attack for QPR, someone who's like really strong and quick and can carry the ball, but I don't think Binks come himself in glory there. It's just been a couple of moments as well where he's been asked a couple of questions and sort of scrambled a bit, but it's early days, hard to really tell. So I think that left centre back position looks up for grabs, and it's kind of either or at the moment.
I'd like to publicly disagree on the idea that Lamptey is soft, though. I don't think he is soft. I actually think he's a bit of a tough one. I think from what I've seen, he's got a lot to his game, and he's not knocked off it very easily from what I've seen so far. So that's the one I think on that left hand side, he's the one who's probably performed the way that I'd like somebody to perform to this point. But I think he's played every minute almost, apart from the other game when he didn't play. I mean, there's a reason why he's done that.
But I've liked him I was a bit worried when I saw him on the left of the three. Then when he moved to the right of the three at Hull, I thought he played really well. And then I thought he played really well at right wing back. I think it's just for me, is what's it. And I thought when he moved into midfield, I thought that was interesting, and I'd be happy to have a look at more of that. I just felt for him a little bit on the left of the. I don't think we'll be seeing him on the left of the three.
No, I don't. Sorry, that's the other point. I don't think he will actually play in there because you've got Binks and you've got Kitchen who are there for a reason. Yeah, that side. He was there to.
I think they would both be fairly pissed off if the one had moved over from Italy for a year and one of them had been bought for 4 million and they were behind.
So that's what I think. But I think in terms of his performances for the team, I think he can rightly say that he's shown he can offer a lot to the team. I think what would be interesting, so I think balance-wise, I agree with Dom in terms of it would make most sense to have the two players that you spent good money on either side of McFadden at the moment. I think Thomas, as strong as he started off, has looked a little bit shaky last few games.
Is that generous?
That's about the most I can give, to be honest. He's looked a bit shaky, hasn't he? That's
I think he's looked really. It's potentially he's still only young and he's coming up into the championship, so it's not a big deal. There's been plenty of players who've looked shaky when they first come in, but I think we might see quite a few more goals through there. Fine, sometimes that's just part of the player's learning curve, isn't it? But again, for 2 million, the problem is that we're judging these players, or I am, by how much we've spent on them, and I sort of think you go 10 years without spending more than £1 million on a player. If you're spending £2 million on the centre back,
we're in a good position, aren't we?
Be a bit more ready to go.
We just don't. He's done it before. We just won't play him. Like if he doesn't play well enough, Robbins will just say, "Okay, we're not going to play you. We're going to because you've got. Let's face it, you've got Latabodiere who can just sit there. You've got Binks who can come in. You can put someone else. Like the options are amazing. Like you can. It's one area of the team where I think we could have an excellent defensive season. And then you look at the fullback. You got Van Avek and De Silva, who, if they play to their maximum, their potential, the way that we think they can play, that's an excellent balance there as well, isn't it?
But on De Silva, if you were Jake Bidwell, would you be a bit pissed off? Because the rotation seen through the rest of the team so far has sometimes felt like really... rotation for sensible sake of making sure that players aren't playing too many games in a row, except for De Silva, who is apparently completely untouchable. And I think he's done well, but I think he's only largely done as well as Bidwell did at times last season, sort of unspectacularly fine.
It's a style thing, isn't it?
Say again.
Sorry, I just think it's a style thing. I won't interrupt Dom's.
Just a bit more attacking.
I just think, if it suits and his interactions with the players around them, just a little bit more Robbinsy, I think.
Yeah, I think I've liked him, but I just wonder whether Bidwell hasn't played a minute yet, has he?
He's played a bit.
Has he come on? I can't remember. I just can't remember.
He's played 68 minutes.
He's played 68 minutes. I
come off the bench 4 times.
Practically a first teamer. I'm just surprised to see that's the one area of the pitch that hasn't been touched at all, apart from those 4 substitute appearances. Happy with De Silva so far?
He's been basically fine. Yes, he's sort of there's not quite that explosiveness that I think you'd really want from an attacking wing back, but he just looks like quite a smart player in possession, knows how to use and rotate the ball around. Looks like he can get in positions to cross, but we haven't quite seen enough quality from that. But also wonder whether we've quite played in the style to get De Silva into positions to for his final ball to be a factor. We haven't really been able to sustain any kind of control over games so much this season, apart from the Norwich game. We've kind of had 15-20 minute spells max where we've been on top. We haven't quite established that pattern yet to our play, and I think that's it's partly caused by how many new players we have, but I think that's also why it's been hard for players to settle, because it still kind of feels like we're trying to figure out how we're trying to play, and not too many sort of look that comfortable with what they're trying to do yet. It's sort of quite individualistic almost at times.
How are we trying to play?
So I think we've definitely tried to play out from the back more. I think the first 5 or 6 games of the season, it was very deliberate how we were trying to build from the back, as sort of a plan to draw teams onto us, and then very quickly use the wing backs, use Palmer, use the strikers to sort of create almost like counter-attacking situations where we could create chances. But I think after possibly the Watford game, I think there's been a slight tweak to that, where we're taking on slightly fewer risks in terms of actually playing out from the back. I think it's certainly over sort of like the Cardiff, Huddersfield, QPR games. I think some of that pattern broke down, and I think what we saw with the Norwich game was that after getting a couple of results in the bag, it was kind of back to, this is how we want to play. We want to play more possession style. The difficulty at the moment is we're trying to play a possession style. We don't really have that passer in midfield to make it tick.
Or a number 10 for them to give it to. Or a striker in form that they can find. Yeah. Okay. Do we need to talk about Ben Wilson? We do need to talk about Ben Wilson, actually, don't we? Because I think I've always seen him as being like our number 2. But last season, obviously, he was Championship Keeper of the Season, etc., etc. But I still struggled last season to see him as anything other than number 2. But you'd be hard pushed after some of the performances this season to not consider him to be a very good keeper now.
It's amazing what belief does, isn't it? Because I think keeper-wise, I think the functions of a keeper and the detail of what they have to go through is fairly mechanical and repeatable, you know, in terms of being able to kick, being able to handle the ball. They all do the same drills. Not saying they're all much of muchness, but there's a lot of similarities between what they do. And ultimately, it's usually about like presence and trust, which gets them into the team. I think I've been in a similar situation to you, Joey. I've always seen him as, for whatever reason, number 2, and he's become number 1 by mistake, just because Simon Moore lost his mind early to part of last season. And he just became number 1. And it was just over the course of time where I think actually now more and more he does facilitate our game, beyond just being a keeper who's in goalie. I think he has got a kind of a presence there in some sense. And I think, like you say, this season, the things which make keepers stand out, the saves, those moments which only the good keepers really do, he's actually started to do even more. Like, I mean, some of the saves he's made recently, they've been phenomenal. It's been fantastic. I mean, I was right behind that shot. It was against, I can't remember, was it Norwich? I can't remember who it was, but
there's one that he got down really low, really quickly. That was, I thought, was much better than the QPR one that was really showered with tremendous levels of praise.
Yeah. There's one actually that he reached up and flicked onto the bar, and it was just the fingertips, but it was a rocket of a shot. It absolutely came out of the foot, and the way he just got there and instinctively managed to flick it onto the bar, I just thought that was a fantastic save. But yeah, the QPR one, everybody went mad for. I mean, you would do it.
It's a brilliant save. I'm not saying it wasn't a brilliant save.
But yeah, all I can give him is credit. I just think it's very hard to change kind of full-blown opinion of you. Like, and if somebody's only ever sees you as like a number 2, it's very hard, certainly from keeper's perspective, to really form a new opinion. But I think he's done everything outside of the pitch as well. I think he's established himself as a personality at the club and as a kind of a figurehead within, you know, for the fans and all that sort of stuff. And I think that helps as well. I mean, and I think now, how old is he? What, 32 now, 31, something like that? He's
about that, yeah.
So yeah, no. It's, when you look at his Wikipedia page and you see that he's just barely played any minutes his entire career, and he's even said himself he wouldn't have imagined being able to play 40 games for the rest of his career a couple of years ago, and now he's doing it sort of regularly. So yeah, I like him. I think, and actually he's doing more than I probably gave him credit for previously. So mainly, we don't necessarily need a brand new keeper, which is good.
Well, despite having one.
Yes.
I just figured he was coming in to be number one, which I think, again, is like a sort of how little respect I've given Ben Wilson that he was championship keeper of the season last season. We signed a keeper. I'm like, guess he's coming in to be first choice keeper.
It is mad, isn't it, really? And Simon Moore's still there as well. Like, yeah, that's like a Man United level of goalkeeping situation you've got there. It's, don't know how that's going to work out, but I totally forgot about Brad Collins, actually. I was talking about Ben Wilson like it was just all was normal. But yeah, we spent money on a good keeper.
Well, this is the thing, is that this, like, if you're Collins now, you must have thought, oh, I'm coming in to challenge for the number one. And now you must just be sat there thinking, oh, I'm really not.
Yeah. Only point. Have we? We haven't. So I know we haven't. But, you know, last season when Burnley, who were in the Championship, bought Luke McNally from a league below, maybe are we a club who can buy people from the league below and they just have to wait their turn? Is that a thing? Are we that big?
Well, yeah, but also is that, like, you know, kind of, we've just talked about Simon Moore, is we got Ben Wilson in to be Simon Moore's number two, didn't we?
Yeah.
And that was just, you know, Simon Moore was number one, maybe Ben Wilson was already there, I don't know. But equally, that hierarchy was very, very, very well established, wasn't it? And then one day it wasn't anymore. So you don't know, do you? But I think if I'm Brad Collins, I'm coming into the club today, like in the summer, and going, right, let's give this a good...
It's a big ask, though, isn't it? Yeah. It's like, because I'm coming in to try and displace Championship goalie of the year. I mean, yeah, he must realise, yeah.
I don't know. Because I just think, I don't know whether... I think it's different than if he was Championship goalie of the year and he was, I don't know, like some super established... Do you know what I mean? Like big name guy, but he's not. I think, and probably Brad Collins, even still, probably carries more fame, doesn't he? Because of his background and where he had his schooling and whatever else. And I guess you just think, and I imagine that Robbins would have Robbinsed him and said, yeah, you're coming in to challenge. And then when he gets here, he's like, this guy's modelling all of the terrace clothes on the club shop. This guy's he's not getting dropped. This guy's like everyone's in love with him. Like he's like the figurehead for the whole club. Like, why did you tell me? He was like, well, yeah, play better than him, and you can get him.
Give me a game. Oh, nah, I'll be all right.
It's funny to think of. I remember Armando Iannucci talking about on a podcast about when you go to Hollywood, it's quite hard to get acclimatized to what he describes as depressed hyperbole, and it's people saying in meetings, yeah, we think you're a genius, you're a seminal talent, and just like these sort of like it's so dead. But I imagine Robbins being like, yeah, you're coming in to challenge for being number one at the club. We think you're going to have a spectacular future here. Just sort of meaning words that he just doesn't mean at all, but we'll just say them to bring in.
He's definitely said that to every player he's brought in as well. It's like all 10 defenders.
You'll be first choice.
Yeah.
Will I be first choice? You'll definitely be first choice. Just sign. I'll deal with once you're through the door. I'll deal with the fact that you're not going to play at all.
It's what I do. I've started ridiculously playing Football Manager again. And I just promised the world to everybody. That's just what you do. Make them unhappy. I don't care. I want you and my team.
Okay, right. So we've covered all of the positions. We've covered some of the games. Is there anything else to talk about? Let's cap off the player discussion by saying who we've been most impressed with out of the signings that we've made so far.
Okay. Well, I can go. So I think the conversation that's just happened makes me doubt myself, but I've quite liked Jay De Silva and Lamptey. I think in terms of coming in and being at a level that we need. I like them. I think Jay Deceiver, actually, the more he moves on in the season, and this is caveated with the idea that I don't like small players. I have a real issue with anybody under they've got to be really good to be small, and he's tiny, and sometimes you notice it, but a lot of time you don't. So I like him. I think he's good. That's kind of the ones, they're the top of my list at the moment. I wanted to really love Ayari immediately. I think I think we took a real punt there and just said, like, let's hope he can come in and be an absolute superstar. And he might still be, but you can definitely see he's young. He doesn't have the physical presence right yet. And he also probably, Mark Robbins must absolutely hate him for the way he walks around the pitch quite as much at the moment. I was looking at the other day against Norwich and he was static. He would stood still on the centre circle while everybody else was swarming around him. And you like, sort of think, well, yeah, I know Messi said to do it, but Mark Robbins is the manager here. So, he's not going to like this. So I do think he will come into his own. I just think he's got something there where once he settles down, he'll be all right. But they're my kind of new signing ones that impressed me so far.
Well, I'd forgotten that we have had more than Jock from Brighton. Gyökeres came in after Ostergaard came in.
Yeah.
And I guess they're the two players that you've got on loan from Brighton, I guess you just go back to Brighton and say, just send anyone.
You know what you're doing. Yeah, we'll have them. Thanks.
Are they foreign? Yeah, that's fine. We'll pop them over and we'll see what we can do. So it makes sense. But I think Paul is quite taken with Ayari.
Oh, yeah.
For those of you that miss Paul. When I'm talking to him, I think he really sees something in him. I'm just not sure if I've seen it yet, really. And I'm conscious that my opinions, such as they are on a podcast that I'm sending out to the world, are shite at the minute because I've only been to one game so far this season. But I've watched every minute in the comfort of my own pathetic prawn sandwich armchair. And I don't know, do you know who he reminds me of a little bit? He reminds me a little bit of when we first signed Liam Kelly. And I was a bit like, this is fine, but I'm not totally sure. I know you're there, but I can't quite put the pieces together as to what you're actually doing. You're obviously not Gus, and that's not a criticism because nobody is.
Mm.
And so I sort of nominally think that you're a forward-thinking midfielder. But aside from that shot that cannons off the bar that Wright heads in against
Blackburn.
What are they called?
Blackburn,
yeah. Is like he's not the most forward-thinking player I've ever seen. He's certainly not a tackler he's just sort of, and he's a kid, isn't he? And he's finding his feet in first-team football for the first time. And in the same way that Kelly, after a little bit, you were like, okay, I get it. This is what you're doing. I think just because of where he's come from and the hype that was around him when he joined, I think I just was hoping it would be a little bit of something more than what I've seen.
I think it will come.
Do you think?
Just because I just think in terms of game by game, there are more moments of kind of maturity that are showing. So I don't think he's there. Like I think we,
no, nor should we expect him to be honest.
Yeah, but you kind of hope you find one of those gems like everybody else seems to get from the Prem, who just comes down and just runs the show, and you get like Teller coming down last season being absolutely ridiculously good, and you just hope you're the team that finds that person. And while he hasn't got there yet, I think there's probably agreement to play him regularly, so he's going to be on the pitch more often. So I can't judge too much in the sense of he's playing, so Robbins must love him. But I think all I've seen from him is that there have been more moments as the games have gone on in him kind of feeling more comfortable on the pitch, was a good sign for me. I just think he must have a lot of quality. He's already played for Sweden international team. Like that's decent enough. He must have something there, and I just hope that it's just a matter of bedding him in and making him feel more comfortable and maybe more confident in the team as well. Because I mean, that shot, that little moment of impulsiveness where he jinks past and has his shot, that's classic. That's really, really good play. Do that a bit more, please. It is Gus-esque, isn't it?
It's literally it's the exact thing that we're missing more than anything else, isn't it? Is that
grab it by the scruff,
that spark of ingenuity and somebody who's willing to kind of do something so outlandish that.
Yep.
Because again, for all the talk of passing out from the back and everything else, still the name of the game is Robin's ball, isn't it? I think still when we look at our best is it's defending on the edge of the 6-yard box where you just think nobody is going to get through here. And then we just aim to nick something. And I just think that aiming to nick something more often than not requires Ayari's precociousness. And then I think a really underrated right header. I think that header is really, really difficult.
Oh, yeah, it's great. Yeah.
To take that off the bar with the keeper where they are. I think he pulls it near post when the keeper is expecting it to go away.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how I think. That's what I think Robin's ball is. That's why I think that kind of it's interesting that he signed the strikers that he signed. Dom, the players that have stood out most for you. Well, the signing that has impressed you most.
I'm really liking more and more Milan Van Evik.
I'm an idiot. I completely forgot him. Carry on.
Yeah, because I think the early appearances almost seemed to be playing with himself a little bit, where he'd dribble past someone and then stop and check back.
Yep.
And I think more recently, obviously, the injury sort of curtailed some of that progress. He's really starting to believe in himself a bit more. I thought when he came on against Norwich at the weekend, he was just in a situation where the team needed a goal. He was on going, give me the ball and I'll try and make something happen. That's something you really want to see. Also, very surprising. Can't remember what game it was. Possibly the Sunderland game when it just turned out he has a long throw.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a nice surprise, wasn't it?
Yeah, quite looping.
Did anyone notice Tats's attempt at a long throw on Saturday?
I thought, what are you doing? I saw him bowl the other day, and I was like, this man does not have any upper arm strength. This is not going to happen. And he throws it like he gave it a go. He throws it like very similar to Norton Cuffy, the sort of netball throw, which is I can't quite believe it's allowed, but it's more of a push than a throw. But Van Avax, that's pretty decent.
He's I was at the Hull game. He's fast.
Oh, he's good.
I don't think he'd been really fast up until that game. But there were a couple of times in that game where you were like, "Oh my god, that's inhuman speed."
And defensively, that's a huge thing as well, isn't it? Not just attacking wise, but what I've seen probably the speed more is the defense.
He's getting back,
the recoveries insane. Like, yeah, don't worry about it. He's there. He's got it. Great.
We talked about like Jordan Willis or like Clark Salter having recovery pace.
Yeah.
This is like this is recovery pace. Like he could go to the toilet and come back in time. Yeah, I would say I know that I'm wrong, and I know that it's because I'm not thinking about it properly. My gut feeling out of all of the signings, the one that I've liked the most, generally speaking, has been Lamptey. I don't think he's played as well at his peak as someone like Van Evik, or maybe even like as well as some of the defenders. Or the other defenders, should I say. But I just think for a player that's played 3 positions already, and it's only the start of October, and I don't think someone that was meant to come in and play as many games as he's played, I just think what a brilliant utility player. Yeah, he's not in my first team, but for a player that was free minus whatever tribunal set as a fee, I just think he's been really impressive. But I think it speaks more to the fact that my opinion of players is swayed so heavily by the cost attached to them. Because, but it must do, mustn't it? Because he empirically hasn't been as good as some of the other players that have been there. But that I can't judge right under any other circumstances than looking at him and thinking, that's fine, but you cost 8 million. We paid 8 million for this.
Yeah, do more.
Yeah, like and that's not fair on him, but I sort of don't care. It's still true, isn't it?
Well, it's a sign of the times, isn't it? It's a sign of what we've just done. We spent 15 million or something more, probably more than that, 18 million in the transfer window. You expect quality like immediately, don't you? Let them bed in, let them find their feet in terms of the system, but innate quality is kind of a given with that sort of prices, isn't it? But go on.
If he comes in and he's shit, like if he's like after 2 years he scored 9 goals, we sell him for 500 grand. So it's not just what he represents as a player, like it's as a business, like as a club, and we've sold Maddison for 3 million in the past, and it's like stopped the club going out of business. Do you know what I mean? Like that was only like 5 years ago or whatever it was. I don't know how easily we just spend 8 million quid on a player, and then if it doesn't work out, we're just like, never mind, it's fine. So I think I can't believe that he's not much better than he is straight away.
I think that's the perfect way to put it, though. Much better straight away. Like, he might get that good, but you just think, how much leeway do I give you? Like, you've got to be brilliant right now, surely. You've got to be that same version of yourself that we saw against Leicester, doing that. Just do that all the time. I know that's a ridiculous thing to say, but you kind of just expect it, don't you?
I don't think it is. I think for what 8 million quid is worth to the overall, to the club, it's huge. The thing for me is what I haven't gone and had a look at is what £8 million will buy you. How much striker are you getting elsewhere for 8 million quid in the Championship?
Well, you get Ollie McBurney for 20 million. So
there you go.
There we go. So
I think this is the other benchmark that I need to sort of set for myself is Britta Sommalonga must have cost
18 million.
10 years ago?
Yeah, exactly.
It was. So the other thing is, I guess you've got to sort of switch out of. You've got to remember that actually 8 million quid for Championship club now. Maybe that's just the going rate.
Yeah. But for us, come on, we don't do this.
I know. The other thing that's really hard to sort of benchmark against is Vic cost 1 million. Have you? By the way, I'm sure you both have. Have you clocked how well Gyökeres is doing at Sporting Lisbon at the minute?
Yeah. It's just he's just. They're already talking about him being sold, not wanting to sell him in the summer. Like they just think somebody's going to come and get him. Somebody thinks they're going to come and get him. And I was in Lisbon earlier in sort of September, and there's just chat. There's just everybody thinks he's something special, which he is.
I think I might be. I think I've got this right. I think he was the Portuguese. Is it called Liga NOS? I think he was Liga NOS Player of the Month in August and September so far. So
I think did they merge them together? Is that what it was?
Been.
Yeah.
Say again.
Oh, did they merge that award together?
Well, there you go. That might have been, but even still, he's won it whilst there's been opportunity to win it.
Yeah, they love him for the same reasons that we love him. They just realise that he's an absolute beast, and you miss that, and that's why I think you mentioned earlier about us continuing the Robbins ball. I do wonder whether we will be able to continue that, because the reason we did that is because we had Gyökeres, the ultimate option, who would somehow buy you 10 seconds. Like, how you do that without him, I don't know. But I would just say, all right, like I miss him so much. I also miss Hamer. But I think Hamer misses us because it's 3 times this season he's been sat behind us. So I was like, okay, he's still coming back. He's still there. He loves it.
You described it as being like when Brent returns to the office with his dog.
Yeah, you don't work here. You've got no reason to be here. Morale, mate. I'm telling you.
That whole situation is really funny, isn't it? Because Sheffield United look like the Sheffield United squad is worse than it was in the Championship.
Yeah,
give or take. And if you're Gus, I guess is he got there and kind of been like, I wonder if I should have stayed.
I think for his overall life happiness, I feel like him being around here is probably going to be better for him. One thing I've noticed, and I can't help but read these things, is so first few games, obviously he scored his couple of goals away from home in big games, like they rate him. Now that overall shite, there's starting to be some discontent, including him as well. I mean, his last game, he was getting quite a lot of grief, and I just find that like unbelievable. But that is going to be his concern, because it's him in a team full of absolute nonsense in the Premiership. How much is he going to be able to kind of offset what they do and still maintain his, his stature, his value? Can he still do that? I mean, the away goals against Spurs and that sort of stuff are going to help if he continues to do that. But the idea that Sheffield United dare say anything bad about him, you're like, no, he's way too good for you. So
I wonder if you were watching a team getting battered every week, going down, quite possibly bottom of the league, I wonder if you'd hate him. His complete refusal to stand in one position and his constant need to try like outlandish things. He's probably the last player you want in a relegation team. Like
I've got to be honest, I think they've got way more bigger things to sort of hate. There's a lot more going on.
You get the impression that if Wilder comes in and takes over, he might be like, not you.
Yeah, we'll have him back. Thanks so much. Not going to happen, but you know what we haven't done?
Go on.
So as we're going through all the new players, talking about if I was to have the last 15 minutes again, I would scratch what I've said and say Sakamoto and Van Avaak, because we haven't even spoke about Sakamoto. And even though he hasn't played that much, I just think as an intrigue, as a player who you look at and think, oh my God, you've got something very interesting. He is that person. And the big debate at the moment is where you play him. And that is going to be a big debate, because by all accounts, his main position is out there on the right. And even though I had an idea and a bit of an argument with somebody on Instagram inexplicably the other day, because they labelled him a left winger, which he is not. He does all his good work. He does all his work on the right. He does his Ian Robbins stuff, where you just sit out there and you do everything you can. You cut right back, he cuts back and forth and all that sort of stuff. But he sits on the right.
Isn't he meant to be a central player?
No. So I looked at because I can't get anything wrong. I had to look at what happened last season, and he plays attacking. He plays more attacking, so he doesn't really play right wing back.
Yeah,
often. He played that. He played it last season, but he plays.
He was playing as a wide right player,
wide right attacking AMR kind of position, and that's where he sits and that's where he plays. So whether we find a way to play Van Avaak and then he slots in there for some games, and it will be some games. It won't be every game. He can't play every game, and we'll play different formations, all that sort of stuff. Maybe that will work. I don't necessarily mind him on the right wing back, but I do. Pound for pound, there's no way that you put him there ahead of Van Avaak, because he offers everything. He offers the full package.
I want to see him in the middle.
And that's why I like your idea earlier. Like, you have your one striker and you have two behind, and he's the one who's floating to the right. Then you've got another option. You can do anything.
It's the dream for me, ever since we've had O'Hare, and I've been frustrated by his output, that you have O'Hare next to a really unpredictable, really frustrating maniac, and then you have a striker in front of them, so that you let your mad number 10 just dribble and lose the ball all the time, and then you tell O'Hare that he's got to stand near them to either take a short pass or win the ball back when they lose the ball. And you have a number 10 that's just waiting on the shoulder all the time to just go as quickly as possible. So you break and you can hit your big striker that can run really fast straight away, or you break and you hit your number 10s, and then one breaks, the striker breaks, they've got two people that can go. And that you can do what Robbins does, which is that really he wants to have 7 players back when we're defending, but you've just got 3 constantly there, but that 2 of them are able to put the other 2 in, and one of them is exclusively looking to go. Whereas I think at the minute, with 2 up front and 1 behind, the one behind is rotating so often that they're not building any relationships with the players around them. Godden doesn't break fast enough and gets caught too offside too often, albeit has been an absolutely fantastic goal scorer so far this season. And then we've got 2 strikers that after one game, people have almost unanimously decided can't play together, which I think is a bit daft. But I don't quite get it.
You know what's mad though?
Say again.
You know what's mad though? Like, so what you've just said there, so the idea and the really nice kind of idea of O'Hare and, let's say, Sakamoto, or Palmer, or that's what I was going to say. Like, Ayari and Palmer are the ones that you don't then play, and that you do that position because we've then got 4 potentially really, really good quality attacking midfielders, and currently, if you have 2 strikers, you can only play one of them. So I think ultimately we might end up having to play 2 of them because I can't see him. I can't see any of those players, no matter what people say on Twitter. I can't see any of those players like that 4 dropping into midfield to perform like the Eccles role or something like that. It just doesn't make any sense to me. They just don't have the presence, but it might happen. But I think when everybody's fit, he is going to look at the quality. And if you've got Ayari and Palmer and Sakamoto and Hare as 4 options, you don't have 3 of those on the bench. You have to find a way to get them in the team. And that's going to be, if we get everybody fit, that's going to be his challenge, I think. How does he come up with a formation? And it won't be every game. I have to keep saying that because people get mad about this, but it won't be every game. But how would you come up with a formation which makes use of as many of those as you can when it makes sense? I mean,
Dom, do you see him playing 2 beyond a striker, or do you think you'll just keep playing 2 strikers?
Well, he hasn't moved away from a 3-4-1-2 at all this season or in pre-season, which kind of a surprise. I suppose, actually, at the end against Blackburn, we went 1 up front, but that was like injury time, dead time. Yeah. So, didn't really count. But it is a formation that Mark Robbins has used a lot in the past. And I think, like Neil was saying, I think once you have O'Hare and Palmer back fit, which will hopefully happen, then the sort of arithmetic of the squad, you'd just be leaving out too many players to be sticking with 3-4-1-2. And with like the results as they are now, where we haven't really got to go, we're sort of picking up a win here and there, picking up a point here and there. Sometimes we lose. There's sort of not been a great deal of consistencies. It's got to be something that he's going to try. And
I don't think he will. That's the thing. We'll wrap this up shortly because I'm conscious of time. I don't think he will. The other thing I'll say is that very, very quickly is you limit the impact that not having Hamer has because you have 2 creative midfielders ahead. And also it means that you can long-term focus on having Sheaf and Eccles as your 2 first-choice central midfielders so that if you don't want to spend loads and loads of money or you can't find the right Hamer replacement, it's not quite as bad. But the problem is that it's like you're putting all of these pieces. Well, we're sort of putting all these pieces together here in a logical way, and this is not a criticism. I just don't think that's how Robbins works, is it? I think Robbins is just like, no, I want 2 strikers.
I'm okay with it as well. I'm really okay with it. I love the idea that we've got a squad this season.
You can do what you want, can't he? It's not.
Yeah, like imagine having the bench with all those players on. That's fantastic. And also imagine being able to, with 20 minutes to go, say, right, we're going to bring on Hadji Wright, we're going to bring on Callum O'Hare and Casey Palmer. It's a bit better than having to bring on like Tavares, Waghorn and Walker. Like it's got a bit better of a ring to it, hasn't it? I mean, we are in a stronger place, I think, than we would have been squad-wise last season. And it is a thing. You have to do it. You have to have options.
You have to have options. That's why we're back, ladies and gentlemen. You have to have options. Right. Anyone got anything they want to say before we wrap things up?
No.
There we go. Right. We'll be back with you next month. Dom, thank you very much.
Cheers. Pleasure to be on.
Neil, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will see you next month. Bye.